And in this next problem, we're moving forward to solving multi-step equations. So the overall goal here, before we even get started, well, I see I have two variables. They're the same variable, it's x. The overall goal in this problem is to isolate the variable. Now there are different ways to isolate this variable. One of the ways is to actually work with these fractions. Another way is to get rid of these fractions. And I actually like that method better because I think it makes the math a little bit more simple. Regardless of what I like, do what works best for you. I'm going to show you how to get rid of these fractions. In order to do that, I need to find a common denominator of 3 and 8. But before we even do that, I'm just going to sidetrack for a second. I'm going to get a new color here, and I'm going to write 9 times 1/9. And I want to know what happens when I multiply 9 times 1/9. Well, let's think about this real quick. 9 as a fraction, if I were going to write this as a fraction, is 9 over 1. Now I can multiply straight through on top and on bottom, or I could use something really cool called cross-canceling. So I'm going to cross off the 9, cross off the 9, and I'm left with 1 over 1. The same would have been true if I took 9 and multiplied it by 1/9 and never even turned the 9 into a fraction. Again, cross-canceling will work. I'm left with 1 in the numerator and 1 in the denominator. From there, I could multiply straight through. All right, now let's take this idea of cross-canceling and use it down in this equation down below. The first thing I'm actually going to do is rewrite this equation, but I'm going to change pen colors. So again, I have 2x over 3 plus 1/3 minus x over 8, which is equal to 2/3. So the same exact equation, but now we have the original to always look back upon. And I want to get rid of the values in the denominator using a common denominator. And I'm going to ask myself, what values do 3 and 8 go into? Well, they both go into 24, so let's use 24. Okay, so in order to do this, whatever I do to one term in the equation, I've got to do it to every single term in the equation. Another way of thinking about this is, whatever I do to this side of the equation, I've got to do to the other. So I'm going to start by opening up a set of parentheses. And I'm going to close them on the other side of the equation. Since my common denominator is 24, I'm going to put it outside of the parentheses. Now this is telling you, whatever value you have outside the parentheses, in this case 24, you're going to take that value and multiply it by each term inside the parentheses. So I'm going to use the distributive property to help me out. Now, let's go back to 24. Before I take 24 and multiply it into this first term, 2x over 3, let's go back to that cross-canceling concept we talked about earlier. We're going to use this concept now. So I know that 24 is a fraction of 24 over 1. So I know that 24 is going to cross-cancel with each denominator inside of the parentheses. So this is the cool trick. You can just cross off each of the values in the denominators. And now let's go back to 24 and think about, well, what value are we left with after we cross-cancel 24 and 3? Well, you're left with 8. So instead of 24 times 2, you're going to take 8 and multiply 8 times 2 in this first term. And you have 3 again in the next denominator. So when you cross-cancel, you're left with 8. So instead of 24 times 1, it's 8 times 1. So I'm going to write 8 times 1 in this case. All right, our next denominator, we have 8. So when you cross-cancel, you're left with 3. So it's 3 times x. So I'm going to write 3 times x. And finally, you have 3 again in that last denominator. So when you cross-cancel, you're left with 8. And you have 8 times 2 in this last term. All right, and for some people, it might be helpful to cross off the value outside of the parentheses so you don't rewrite it later or use it later. So let's rewrite this new equation below. So I have 8 times 2x, which is 16x, plus 8 times 1, which will give a value of 8, minus 3 times x, which is 3x, which is equal to 8 times 2, which is 16. Okay, from here it's just a matter of combining like terms, then isolating that variable. All right, so I'm going to circle 16x, also subtraction of 3x, and I'm going to change colors one more time, and I'm just going to put a little squiggly line under 8 and 16 here. All right, so I'm going to use the coefficients, 16 and 3. So 16 minus 3 is 13. So I have 13x plus 8 is equal to 16. Now from here, it's just a matter of isolating the variable x. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. These will cancel out. I'm left with 13x is equal 16 minus 8 gives me a value of 8. Okay, so I have 13x equals 8, and I need to get a little bit more room on the screen. And I'm going to change colors real quick. All right, so the inverse operation, we're going to divide by 13 on both sides. 13, multiplication of 13, division of 13 cancel out. I'm left with x equals 8/13. Okay, so before boxing up your answer, your very last step would be to substitute 8/13 into each variable x in your original equation to see that it checks out. But to save time, I'm going to box this information up. And I'll show you how to check your work in some future videos. See ya.